new that have never been done before.
We the people tell the government what to do. It doesn't tell us. We the people are the driver. The government is the car. And we decide where it should go and by what route to do. We the people are free. And I hope we have once again reminded people that man is not free unless government is limited.
Well, g'day folks, how are you? Hope you're doing all right. I'm pushing through life, the universe and everything a little slowly. We're going to start off with a little video first up tonight, just to give your mind something to think about. Oh, be better if I played it, wouldn't it?
Back to the 1900s, and we look at the building of mental asylums. They were extremely large and had thousands of rooms. So when you start to wonder, why would someone build a mental asylum that large in the 1900s? Not to mention the resources that it would take. And especially when you look at the early 1900s people who were only living in little houses and shacks made from wood. Then you have these huge mental asylums, expertly made, where they're locking up thousands of people who went against the narrative. And can you guess what that narrative was? Well, it was the life that you lead today, when they started to first introduce taxes and those things that we get jabbed into our arms. And when people would go against the narrative, they'd get locked up in these mental asylums. And it would be put out on radio broadcasts as well. If you or anyone went up against the system, they would be locked up. And if you actually look back, they actually got locked up and got rid of a lot of population back in that time who went against the system. So if you actually go and look at the mental asylums in the 1900s, you'll start to see buildings and their size and their structure, which doesn't really make any sense for the time period. And then the majority of them were actually demolished during World War I. The majority in England were demolished, and there is very few left because they wanted to hide the evidence. And if you think about the mud flood as well, these mental asylums started to increase massively after the 1800s, which is when the mud flood took place, around those times anyway, which is funny because then you have to question, were these people put in mental asylums because they spoke out about the mud flood and the forgotten history of Tartaria?
Certainly a reasonable question to be asking, I would have thought, wouldn't you? Just thought we'd kick that off as a little brain teaser tonight. There are so many weird questions about our history, none of which appear to be answered in any real sense. And there's so much more being revealed on a daily basis at the moment. Have you seen what's going on in Petra at the moment? They've had huge floods. Petra is that magnificent facade that's carved into a cliff wall, if you like. It's and you can go into it. It's a building. Well, there was like a waterfall coming down from various parts of that. Amazing amounts of flooding in that area, and apparently it's unearthing a few things. The floodwaters. I mean, not the first time that Petra's been flooded, so I don't know. Maybe this is the year for it. How are you all going? You having a good night? It was first in tonight. The lovely Aussie Sue. And, well, I did have that one up to try and say, please remember to like and subscribe. Vince is obviously pushing the buttons for me in the background as well. Thank you, buddy. Also, the lovely Sandy K, crazy week. Oh, you've down a couple of donkeys. Well, I hope that's for a good reason, not necessarily one that is will require the digging of holes, which is all a bit rude. Spazza was in too. He's been having a... Well, we'll talk more about Spazza shortly because he sent me some good stuff we're going to have a bit of a chat about. But I don't think you're far wrong here. We've been saying next year for, 5 years now. However, there's more truth out and more norms coming to our side of the argument now than ever before, mate. So I think you're probably pretty close to it. Tony, I think you were first up in the room tonight. Magnificent man that you are. I hope you're doing well, brother, and life, the university in Melbourne is keeping you safe. And, well, safe is a big issue in Victoria, as what this says. Victoria is a mental asylum. I was lucky enough to grow up in Victoria, and the biggest... Well, there were a few really bad ones in Melbourne, I vaguely remember. There was also a very big mental health hospital treatment facility in Ballarat at Wendouree. And funnily enough, after it was essentially mostly torn down, there was a small part of it that was left standing, and an old mate of mine who used to do all the Harvey Norman commercials bought an office in there. and commenced a studio business doing his Harvey Norman stuff out of there and other things. And I wound up working with him for a while. He had a heart attack, so I took over his business for him. And we were working out of that office. It was quite strange because we had people who used to work in the mental hospital come and have a look at the place because it had been barred up for years and nobody could get inside after they'd done all the demolition work. So we had people who used to work there come and visit us, and they came and let us know that certain areas of our floor at least used to be the shock therapy room. It's always a bit of fun. But that, to me, really does speak some truth, our Tartarian history hidden. Certainly, we have infinite examples of architecture that is out of place and time, the history we have been taught. Nobody in a government has come out and tried to explain this or give an explanation for it. And certainly when these new things are unraveled or revealed, as they seem to have been over the last few years, governments offer nothing and go the other way, try and suppress it, obviously. Mainstream media is not talking about it in any way, shape or form. And in fact, I think mainstream media are now fully aware that the vast majority of the population do not trust them in any way. They probably view the news as more entertainment value than anything else, if they're still watching it. And that I leave a very broad statement there. I should segregate a certain section of the community out of that, and that would be the ABC lovers, both the listeners to the radio and the watchers of the TV channels that they offer up. They don't work for us in any way, shape or form. They work for the people running the world, or the ones that want to run the world, and that isn't the Australian government. I can guarantee you that. We're going to have a few little interesting chats tonight about this bunch of horrible, horrible human beings who have been exercising all sorts of interesting coercive tactics that will be able to exercise further control over you. And one of them is this document right here. Now, I have posted the link to this document in the description. I'll also post it right now in the chat for you. If you like four-wheel driving, or in fact, if you like just driving around in the bush, if you like being off-road, if you drive off the bitumen pretty regularly, this is going to affect you and impact you in significant ways. Now, this is a submission deal, so you have only a few days left. There were 42 days initially to put in a submission. Why would you be putting in a submission? Well, what they want your input on is the speed limit on dirt roads, on unsigned posted dirt roads. Now, the lies that this department start to tell you are the risk of being killed on a regular or remote road is 11 times higher compared to a road in a major city. I would argue that that number has been tampered with, and if you actually were to drill down into the number of country deaths and find city drivers, and we are going to have to get down to base nationalities of this, because it's quite clear Australians have been able to drive on dirt roads with moderate deaths since we got here. Now, for some reason, there seems to be an uptake or an uplift in deaths on dirt roads. I don't know how true this is. It could be that we have a whole heap of bunch of new Australians who are going off to enjoy their new country, going out to check it out. Let's go and see a kangaroo in the wild. And you wind up driving up a dirt road and trying to do a U-turn somewhere you can't, or you don't know the difference in the surface that you are traveling on. You can't feel it in the car. You have no road sense. You have, and let's face it, there are many people out there who have absolutely no road sense, no feel, no mechanical feel, no mechanical sympathy with the vehicles that they drive. They just get in, turn the key and go. When it doesn't go, they call someone to make it go. That's as simple as it gets. Well, I'm sure there are a lot of new Australians who rate very highly in the death or dismemberment or disaster figures associated with road trauma around the country. Now, what this federal government intervention is doing is anybody's guess. The feds do not have the power to legislate speed limits over the states. That's the domain of the states. However, I suppose if the government does this sort of report and says, oh no, we are going to drop the speed, or we're going to make a mandatory speed limit on dirt and gravel roads of 60 kilometres an hour or 70 kilometres an hour or 50 or 80, whatever it might be. Now, it's unfortunate that a whole bunch of shiny bum asshole administrators, bureaucrats have come up with this idea. I would even go so far as to suggest there are some numpty little advisors tucked away in the representatives' teams who've had this bright spark of an idea. They'll be urban politicians and their administrators that have come up with this. It won't be somebody who's lived in the bush, right? When you grow up in the bush, you learn how to drive on the roads because all your mates live out on farms and there aren't too many bitumen roads going to the farms. There aren't too many farmers killing themselves on the dirt tracks around their properties. What it comes down to is, like everything else on our roads, driver skill, driver ability, driver attention to detail. And we have none of that with the imports that we are currently flooding the country with. Now, some of them think they can drive. Some of them may have driven 10-ton trucks where they came from. And they think, because it's a status symbol where they come from, that here they deserve that same status. Unfortunately, they run into Aussie drivers who have very little tolerance for poor driving. It's got nothing to do with colour, creed, shape you are, where you come from. It has everything to do with your driving abilities. And so far, we have a number of international new arrival drivers being well overrepresented in the crash statistics. But because of this do good, bloody great, no, we can't go and point out different sections of the community that are doing the wrong thing, we can't name them, then it's not the done thing. You get smeared because you're a racist if you identify somebody who clearly does not have the skills or ability to drive a normal vehicle, let alone a heavy vehicle, let alone a multi-combination. And how many of these new Australian drivers are on our roads and can't read English, maybe can't even speak English, probably don't understand English? This is something that is happening in America at the moment. You may have heard recently there's been a spate of absolutely horrendous truck accidents where, I think 3 people were killed in the one on the Florida Turnpike. There was another one somewhere in the middle of America. And then recently there was another one in California. Now, all 3 of those accidents were truck driver error, truck driver inattention to detail, truck driver. In every instance of those 3 crashes, the truck drivers were illegal immigrants who had come across the border at Joe Biden's invitation. That is the southern border. They didn't come through any border stop. Somehow or other, even though being illegal and not having a driver's license of any kind for America, in California, that wasn't any kind of inhibitor to getting a license. If you wanted to drive a truck, all you had to do was call up to the Californian DMV, turn up, and they would make allowances for the fact that you were new to the country, that you didn't speak English very well, that they took your word that you knew how to drive a truck. and you get a license, or you don't, as the case has been for 2 of those 3. They don't have a license. They don't have any reason to be in America. They don't have any English skills, and clearly just as many driving skills. The most recent accident that I'm aware of was in California. I think it killed 4 or 5 people. It crushed 4 cars, and this truck sailed off into another truck. I don't understand how, and it happens. It's always confused me at racetracks as well. Cars, when they have an accident, and I've had a few accidents. I mean, you don't do the driving I sort of do and not have the odd accident at times. Thankfully, I had most of my accidents in my youth, where I was driving stupidly and doing silly things that all young people do occasionally. And I'm very fortunate. I never killed anybody, but I did manage to write off 2 cars before I got my license. So, and one of them was on a dirt road, funnily enough, at night. Wound up in a table drain, went through a chook shed. Very ugly. Very ugly. XC Falcon, if memory serves. But I went off and learned, because I had a lot of country driving to do. And you learn to appreciate the road surface you are on and the differences in it. If it's got lots of little rocks on it, don't drive as fast, because you're going to slide a lot more. Pretty simple stuff, but if it's only simple if we've lived it all our lives. Those who come in from overseas don't necessarily understand this, although most of these countries only have friggin' dirt roads. So I don't know how they didn't learn to drive on their own dirt roads before they got here, or maybe their dirt roads are of just such a shit standard, and they're driving while at a high standard for their dirt roads is a shit standard for all of ours. That could be the same, could be the issue. But right now, our biggest problem is we have so many drivers on the road who don't know what they're doing, and the government now wants to throw more pressure on you living in the bush to drive at a much lower speed limit. People die at 60 kilometers an hour on dirt roads. Not every day, thankfully, but it happens. People can die on a dirt road, on any road, doing 50 kilometers an hour, 40 kilometers an hour. It doesn't really matter. The speed is not the problem. It's the sudden stop at the end, and whether or not that sack that, surrounds your soul can put up with the shock of it. That's the big matter. And sadly, some people can't. Very minor accidents, people have a heart attack or die. They get scared or whatever happens. In our case, they just tend to go to sleep at the wheel, or they get on their phone, or they're changing from one diggy song to another, and they take their eye off for a second to hit the button, and bang. And when you're driving a B-triple or a quad trailer across the country, non-stop, with you and maybe 2 other people in the cab with you, well, it's a big bang. It is a very big bang. And look, I'm going to give you an example of the kind of driving that we're talking about here. This bloke clearly didn't get the message that dirt roads are not really good to drive on, particularly if you are in a very large, heavy vehicle. Oh, whoops, it wasn't a dirt road. This is a bloke who clearly couldn't read any of the signs and has no physical understanding of what a cul-de-sac is, that he thought he would just get his truck in there and give that a go. I don't know about that. Well, can we see what sort of make of truck is that? Iveco, maybe, something like that. I don't know. I found it a bit weird because they've got a threesome button inside it for the drivers. Lucky them, I guess. Everybody's entitled to a break. At any rate, bit of weird shit going on with the trucks. And if you want to keep our dirt speed limits at a reasonable thing, it's common sense. I mean, you don't get people who have been driving on dirt roads speeding on them. They know it's a great way to wind up in a table drain that you can't see because of all the grass growing out of it on either side of the road. Table drains cause a great deal of damage to cars. I know, that's where one of them got written off. But we keep letting these people on our roads, and then we keep dumbing down our road laws to meet the skills and abilities of these imports rather than the people here on the Australian road. It is absolutely friggin' sickening. Weather wars. They're coming back at us, folks. And recently, the bomb changed the way that it allowed us to view all the information that it gathers and displays. And the new way that it displays it is practically useless. However, we have found others, and windy.com is well worth having a bit of a look at. Some of its radar information is quite detailed, as this would show. Now, we all know that we've looked at the storms for the last few days. This is a storm from yesterday, and this is a screenshot taken of Moree. There is a very strange radiating energy field coming out of Moree. Now, we know that we have seen beam energies come out of this area before, somewhere a little south of Moree, in fact. And this one looks to be coming clear straight out of it. You can see the pattern, that rather interesting surround pattern. And if you think that that was the only place that was happening, you would be wrong. And this is where we get onto Spazza. Spazza was keeping a good eye on the bomb site yesterday and sent me these. Now, Crow's Nest is a little place about an hour north of Toowoomba in the Blackall Range. And it's a beautiful, beautiful little town. We have never seen anything that puts out that sort of energy in that sort of pattern in that area before. At least I find that is pretty new. And it was up for a while. Interesting, when this huge storm that had built up and was coming in from the west, it was still building at this stage. You can see the red and orange bits there. I can tell you that when it got a lot more further east, it was a hell of a lot bigger and a hell of a lot stronger than what it's showing up there. But this is what it looked like as it passed over Crow's Nest. Now, nobody that I've shown these images to today can explain to me what they are. And the fact that Crow's Nest is also a new and interesting place to have something like this pop up, this little energy field or whatever the hell it is. So what could it be? Well, it could be a lot of things. It could be what we think is some sort of energy pulse designed to energize the atmosphere and the things that they've sprayed into it, which will help the storm intensify. We know that they've been flagging things like big storms, big hail, and tornadoes. Now, I don't know how old you are, but the talk of tornadoes in this country is new. I remember probably the last time I heard of a tornado would have been in the late 70s or early 80s in a little town called Mortlake in Victoria, where one lunchtime I was home from school and a tornado hit the town. And it was seen, it picked up a few wheat silos that were mobile wheat silos and threw them some distance, tore the roof off a house somewhere. That was the first tornado we'd ever heard of. And I got to admit, I haven't heard of too many of them since. And the Bureau actually wound up explaining it away as there's a mountain or a large hill called Mount Shadwell in Mortlake. And they say that this, whatever it was, bounced up against that, folded back on itself. There was a huge crack of thunder and lightning and a huge bang. The earth shook. And, a bit of wind blowing stuff around. So that's, we might have had the odd mention of it since. But in all my career in radio, and I must have read tens of thousands of weather reports in my years. Tens of thousands. We used to get it off a telex that was like a 5-meter long weather printout. And we have to read the whole friggin' lot because everybody in the bush needs to know everything that's going on with the weather. And that's back in the days when the Bureau used to actually provide decent weather information. They haven't done that in many, many years. But there was never talk of tornadoes. And admittedly, I was in Victoria, so we weren't talking about cyclones either. But they made the news when Queensland was getting a cyclone, or Western Australia, or the top end somewhere was getting a cyclone. Yeah, we heard about it. It didn't affect us in any way, shape, or form, but we heard about it. Now we're getting tornado warnings in places where tornadoes have never been. We're getting cyclone warnings and cyclones coming further south than they have ever been seen before. And of course, these criminals that are installed in our foreign belligerent occupying force in Canberra want us to believe that putting up some of these absolutely magnificent solar farms and wind turbines is going to fix everything. Leaves me a bit flaccid, if you know what I mean. Italy's got the right idea. Italy's gone on strike, and they've actually got behind it. The nation seems to have got behind it. That means that the nation is not paying taxes. The nation is doing nothing on behalf of the government, for the government. And people, I believe, there is a word for it. I'm not Italian, so I'm not even going to bother attempting it. But they're not being as respectful as they once were to the police and to the government officials and all that. In fact, they are being exactly the opposite. However, they're doing it peacefully. And they're pushing back with everything they can at the moment. The world, and I suspect many of us here in Australia, are watching what goes on there very, very closely. You're not seeing any of this on mainstream media. Mainstream media aren't telling you that Italy is overrun by the people. They want to be rid of their government. Rid of their government. And they want to be rid of all the illegal immigrants that have been forced into Italy as well. I can tell you that Germany is ready to push back. Well, not the government, but the people are ready to push back. There are such horrendous crime figures coming out of various cities in Germany, mostly to do with attacks on women, but there are attacks on men. There are serious crime matters, and we're not the only country. Victoria is not the only state that has problem with black people running around with machetes doing great damage. Apparently in Europe, though, these folks are much more motivated to do you significant harm. It's either that or the young kids, and they are kids who are doing it here in Australia, just, well, thankfully, not swinging them as hard as they could and being mindful of where they're actually swinging them. How there aren't arms chopped off with kids, holding up their hands in defensive postures, I do not know. It goes to show that while they might be able to carry one of these blades, they don't know how to sharpen it. Maybe. And I'm really good at sharpening knives. I'd love to help, but not for that. Pauline Hanson's out of the country. She's hopped on the big silver bird with no propellers and disappeared off to America. And on Friday night, Halloween, she was invited to a very swish party at Mar-a-Lago. Donald Trump was there. She wasn't seated at his table, but she did get to speak with him. She was seated at the table of Gina Rinehart. God love Gina. Gina obviously has the Don in her sights. Why? Well, they're great friends. Billionaires are a bit like that, but they are great friends and have been for a long time. They are going to be much closer friends now because guess who owns most of those rare earth mines that we have here in Australia? Now, I've always had let's not overstate it. I've always had respect for Gina Rinehart. I once had respect for Twiggy Forrest. I've had respect for the big miners, the BHPs, the Rios. And now, after all of the research that I've done, all of the research that you've done and shared with me, there isn't anything I would do or say with regard to these deceitful actions that our government is taking. But we have to, like Pauline wants to stand up and be recognised, and she's doing her bit for it. She's going to be, I think, one of the first Australians to speak in an American CPAC, which is coming up this weekend, and that will be a very interesting turning point in Pauline Hanson's career. At the moment, Sky News and the like are fluffing her feathers a bit. She has gone up in the polls. I think One Nation is now 15 or 16% higher than it was at the last election. And that is a massive change in what could be our next parliament, if it can be maintained. I saw an interview recently with Pauline where she suggested that One Nation were going after at least 7, maybe 8 seats in the Senate. And they have a very good chance, if they cannot do anything stupid and blow themselves up with the people between now and the next election, they will have a very significant chance at becoming the bloc we need in the Senate. In 2 years, it's possible she could get a lot more people wanting to run, and maybe run in the House of Representatives as well. I'm not sure if that's where her daughter Lee is planning on running, whether that's the House or the Senate. They do have, pretty good vibe with the Senate, so to speak. And Pauline will be very safe next election. She'll be one of the 4 that stand up. In Queensland, there are 12 senators. The Liberals, the Nationals, and the Greens all hold Senate seats from Queensland, but that could change dramatically if these people can all learn to play together. So that's going to be the big test for Pauline and her One Nation team. It will be the test for people like Barnaby Joyce, and there are more than one Barnaby Joyce type people in other parties considering jumping ship. The Liberal Party and the National Party are going head to head at the moment because the Nationals, after Barnaby's defection, let's call it, he hasn't left the party room yet, but he's made it very clear that he doesn't get along with the leaders. The National Party no longer serves him and doesn't believe that it is serving the people of his constituency, that he would stand and run as an independent or fall in line with Pauline. Now, he's not the only one. However, it's called the Liberal National Party at the moment. It's a coalition. This has the ability to drive it all apart. And why is that? Well, because Pauline is showing some common sense. She's saying, stop the mass migration, which is something that every Australian, I think, anyone with half a brain and a bit of rational thought processes would understand. I think she's, if she can maintain this level of popularity, and if she can keep saying the right things and bring more people like Barnaby Joyce, like the Katters, she is going to need Bob Katter's support to win another Senate seat in Queensland. She's going to need Robbie Katter's support. Now, Far North Queensland is a law unto themselves, and if you're unaware of it, God love them. There is an idea that the Katters are profit, and it's been around for many, many years, that Queensland gets split in two and we get another state out of it. Now, I don't know that that is ever going to happen. It would be interesting if it did, because all of Queensland's wealth is locked in essentially north of the Tropic of Capricorn. Run a line through Gladstone is the Tropic of Capricorn. and anywhere north of there would become far north Queensland and a different state. All the mines would happily fall into that area. So too would the Australian National Gold Reserve at Palmer River, a very wealthy part of the land in far north Queensland. So would it mean better governance for Queensland? Yes, I think it probably would. There's probably an argument that says West Australia could do the same thing, although there aren't probably as many people living in far northern Western Australia. But there is clear evidence that change is going to come, and it will come from far north Queensland and move south. If One Nation can continue this momentum they have built, if they can come forward with good policies and policies that those people who want to stand for a seat or who are promoting One Nation can articulate cleanly, can articulate strongly, can defend strongly, then they might be in with something. And I would support them going forward, even though I don't necessarily believe that... I'm not going to say that all politicians are corrupt. I've met quite a few politicians, and not many of them are very smart. They have advisors for that. And I've found that those people who get pushed forward to be these politicians are generally mannequins, having their strings tightened and rubbed and pushed and prodded from somebody behind them. I think Pauline's probably a little bit different in that regard, but this isn't the first time we've seen a massive surge in support for One Nation and have it all fall over at the next election. Something always comes out. And it seems to be a division that comes from the Liberal Nationals, because up until now, that would be where One Nation was attracting most of its votes from. But not anymore. They're shutting Labor down as well. Their figures are going through the roof at the moment with support. I'm talking about One Nation. And that is a momentum they need to keep carrying for the next 2 years until the next federal election. What can we do to encourage them? What can we do to help support them do that? And what can we do to educate them about the Australian Constitution? Now, something came up. Did I actually suck it in? I don't think I did. Let me go and grab this. Somebody sent a letter to the Attorney General querying the Constitution and where the government actually stands with the Constitution. Now, like every good government department, the person that you address that letter to very rarely replies. They get an underthing to reply. So this is the reply the underthing gave to dear whoever it was. The Commonwealth of Australia Constitution Act. Now, this is for people to understand what the Australian Constitution is. And I think most of you have got a pretty fair grasp on what the Australian Constitution Act 1901 actually is. But let's talk further. Thank you for your letter to the Honourable J. Quigley, MLA, Attorney General, dated 17 September 2009 regarding the Constitution. The Attorney General has asked me to respond to you. This sounds like a state matter, not a federal, by the way. While I cannot identify from your email in what context the Honourable Sue Ellery, Minister for Education and Training, was referring to in the Constitution 1901, I can provide a brief outline of the purpose of this legislation. The Commonwealth of Australia Constitution Act 1901 is omitted there. The Constitution came into effect in 1901. It is the fundamental law of Australia binding everybody, including the Commonwealth Parliament and the Parliament of the states. Notice the verbiage or the wordage there. It is the fundamental law of Australia binding everybody, including the Commonwealth Parliament, not the Australian government, the Commonwealth Parliament, and the Parliament of the states, not the Victorian government, not the Queensland government, the South Australian government, or the West Australian government, or any other state-titled government. That isn't in the Constitution. And only, as you're about to find out, what is in the Constitution is real. The Constitution describes the composition, role, and powers of the Australian Parliament, not the Australian government. This includes how the Commonwealth and states share the power to make laws. The Constitution also details some of the rights of Australian citizens, for example, the right to religious freedom. You do have that right in Australia. What you don't have the right to is free speech. There is no provision for free speech in the Australian Constitution, any version that you might care to quote, which is a bit wrong, I would have thought. The Constitution can only be changed with the approval of the Australian people by referendum. Well, we know that that's a lie too, don't we? Because we had a referendum recently, the voice referendum, which was going to make considerable, significant changes to our Constitution. And what happened to that? Well, it got voted down, deeper and down. $400 million wasted by the criminal left government running this country, trying to bribe everybody from the media right down to you to agreeing with them that the voice was a great idea. And didn't Australia breathe a sigh of relief when that was kicked firmly in the nuts and sent scampering off under the deepest, darkest rock that it can climb under? Well, that rock turned out to be Victoria. And we certainly know the government there is full of rock spiders, very strong ones, capable of overturning rocks and reinvigorating life. I mean, if anybody can fuck life into a corpse, it's the Victorian politicians, don't you think? So, I beg your pardon, that's probably a very bad analogy. These criminals masquerading as parliaments, particularly in Victoria, have now got a treaty. How wonderful it will be to have that treaty. It's going to be, oh, so wonderful for everybody involved. Except it's not. Victorian supporters of this treaty are currently celebrating what it means to give Aboriginal people a voice in their future. Well, they've always had a voice in their future. Always. They've got exactly the same vote as I have. One vote, one body, one vote. But that's not good enough for the land councils. That's not good enough for the greedy black mafia, the Aboriginal mafia, as it's being referred to these days, led by some absolute filth that resides on the Labor side of the government. I'm not saying there aren't other filth in the other parties. I'm sure there are. But the one currently, well, a number currently in the Labor Party are really doing an outstanding job. So now the Victorian state government, although it's not, has decided in its infinite wisdom to legislate a treaty into place. God, Victoria, how many of you are packing up, getting ready to leave? And are you coming to Queensland? Don't. There's nowhere to live. Unless you've got a caravan. It's staggering. The level of duplicity exercised by the Victorian state government. And what are Victorians doing about it? Fucking nothing. Nothing. Oh, there's nothing we can do. Well, there is. There's a lot you can do. And maybe it's time we started doing it. Does it have to start in Victoria? How many strong Victorians are there? I know that there are many in our Freedom family. Tony amongst the strongest. But he is one of many. Becchio and her team from Truth Seekers. There are so many people. My place, not just Darren Bergworth, but My Place all through Victoria, supported by My Place around Australia. And that's something you want to consider, folks. Joining a My Place near you. Because you're going to find a lot of right-minded people. You're going to hear an awful lot of ideas and suggestions. You're going to see and understand a lot of research that a lot of other people have done. And from there, you will be able to make an informed decision about what our next steps should be. And it will be coordinated if My Place can get their shit together. And there are some concerns I have there. And I'll be honest, there is one concern I have there. Yeah, there's one concern I have there. But if we got rid of that one concern, I think My Place can help lead this country back to some form of parliament that resembles that which our Constitution denotes. We need a place to gather. We need a place to find our friends. That's what My Place was always about. Darren set it up with that in mind. There's a lot of other things that have gone into it now and a lot of other bits and pieces, which to my mind are superfluous in certain ways, but useful in many, many others. I get comments almost on a daily basis from My Place people who are thankful for their My Place, thankful for the interactions. I met a marvellous group from the Northern Gold Coast just last week. I think there is another meeting either tomorrow or the next day. I don't think I'll be able to get to it, but a beautiful bunch of people. Now, they have their meeting during the middle of the day because it's just easier for everybody. But there were 25 people who turned up at a cafe like mid-morning to have really good, informative conversations. Every one of them was researching something themselves and was sharing that information. These are the kinds of groups we need to embrace, people. You need to. If you've got information you need to share, you need to get into something like that and start sharing it. Don't go to the local Freemasons Lodge. They'll make you roll up your pants leg and swallow a sword. But you can go to a My Place and not have that sort of worry. I think Ricardo's given up on his bent of trying to claim that Darren Bergworth and me and anybody associated with My Place was a Freemason. I think he's given up trying to, well, as far as I know, he's given up full stop. Because I haven't seen him, haven't heard from him. I don't think anybody in Australia has heard from him since he shat on, well, just about everybody. He has some limited interactions with his American audience, one of whom will be joining me hopefully in the next little while. We'll have a little bit of a chat and catch up, not about Ricardo in any way, shape or form, but I'm very interested to get his perspective on what's going on in America at the moment and what we can expect coming up from January 1st. One of the things to be expected from January 1st is a lot of troop movements in and around Washington. They are preparing for something. There isn't an inauguration. There won't be a January 6th, so to speak, unless it is in memory of that January 6th. But we're getting a lot of intel saying in the lead up to Christmas, there'll be a lot of things happening that the world will truly be awake to. And then from January, we're going to start seeing military solutions being put in place and associated other things. Now, take that for what you will. Whether or not it's real, I don't know. We've heard it for so many years. The White Hats have been telling us that, you know, they're all going to fix everything and all we have to do is follow the plan. The only problem with following that plan is there is no bloody plan. The plan we had was actioned, and either we failed in that we weren't able to attract enough attention, or we just don't have enough numbers yet, which is highly possible. I saw something pop up there. Bosey's going on with Patriot Street Fighter and Jayco. Well, it'll be one of those two blokes I'll be talking to in the not too distant future. And if I get one, I'll probably get the other one. So we will have a bit of a chat with them at some stage. I think my emails are turning up in spam folders at the moment, but I'm receiving theirs. So we'll see how it goes at their end. But hopefully, maybe later this week, we'll be able to organise something there to give you a little bit of an idea of how things are happening in America. And rapidly is, I think, how things are happening in America. Pardon me. There is, it's so hard now. In the last month, the AI constructs that are being pushed out into social media and mainstream media are getting harder and harder to pick, much harder to pick. And you've really got to view them a lot. For some reason or other, I have been getting in YouTube shorts feeds and that kind of crap, all of this AI whale shit, whales jumping out of boats, whales the size of friggin' cruise liners jumping out and crushing fishing boats. It's all bullshit. It is not happening, folks. Do not believe it. If you think, oh, wow, that looks so spectacular. And they're even doing it. Like I saw something popped up today. There's a bloke standing on the arse end of a fishing trawler with a wave coming towards him from the back of the boat. Not a huge wave, just a bit of swell that's coming up against the back of the boat. And then next thing, some huge AI-generated shark leaps out of this wave and chomps the bloke. Now, for all the money, it looks like a real video. Some people will be traumatized by watching that, believing that it's real. If our e-safety Karen needs to exercise her strength and power in some way, shape, or form, I would suggest that rather than trying to make everybody who's over 16 gain a digital identification so that we can be known to be over 16 and be allowed to access our Facebook account, they'd be doing much better trying to throw some money at that other problem. It might fix it a lot quicker. It will certainly help us moving forward. But that might require the use of some common sense, and we don't have too much common sense in this country. One thing, I've actually been aware of this now for a couple of weeks, and I've neglected to bring it up for a variety of reasons, so I apologize. It's not that I'm trying to hide information from you in any way, shape, or form. But I have heard that if you are a Croatian man and you hold dual citizenship, particularly if you are a young Croatian man, you are going to get called up in Croatia for compulsory military service. Now, they're looking for young men aged between 18 and 30, and they're actively seeking them out within the Croatian-Australian community. Now, the government has, the Australian government, has issued a bit of a notice. The Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade have issued what they call a stark warning, telling male dual Australian Croatian nationals that they must fulfill their obligations under the law. And that means that if Croatia says that you are going to come and serve in the Croatian army for 2 years, then thank you very much. Pack up your kit, hop on the plane, and head to Croatia. And if you decided you weren't going, you were going to be a conscientious objector, I think you'll go to jail. And by the sounds of that statement from the Australian government, they are going to put you there because it's the law. These changes come into effect from January 1st. A lot of interesting new changes from January 1st. and it's already been voted on by the Croatian parliament. The lawmakers there have already voted it into reality. They're saying they are restoring mandatory military service. And why are they restoring it? They're restoring it to strengthen NATO and the member nations' defense capabilities. So here is the upshot of Donald Trump going to NATO and saying, we're not paying your bills anymore. We're not going to keep funding this bullshit. You are going to have to step up and start looking after your own defenses. And all of the countries in NATO are probably looking at doing exactly what Croatia have done. So if you are a dual national, and Jews here are, excused, because we all know you're more than ready and prepared to go and fight for the homeland, in the homeland, let's hope. But you've already had your training and done your 2 years military service, for which you can forever be called back up. And Avi demonstrates that on a regular basis. Good luck to him. Melbourne Cup today. I didn't watch it. Couldn't care less about it. But I did hear that the horse who won, called Half Yours, came off the track with blood running from its mouth. A lot of people get very upset about horse racing and, all that cruelty. They whip the horses. They don't. They actually either whack their boot or they whack the saddle. They don't really beat the horse, I don't think. I had a jockey once who wanted to punch the shit out of me for having a go at him about belting the horse, and showed me the bruises up and down his own leg from where he whips himself. It's the noise of the whip on the boot, I think, that makes the noise. Anyway, I'm no jockey. Horses don't like me very much. And that's why I figure I don't have to spend any money on the Melbourne Cup. But this horse today, Half Yours, I think it's called, managed to win and win by quite a margin. The only reason I bring it up is it was the only Australian-bred horse in the field. $4.5 million race, and it was the only fully Australian-bred horse in the field. I think that alone deserves a cup, considering that we have all the richest elite deep staters in the world with their favourite playthings, their horses, at the track. And this is why I've never got into horse racing, because I've always felt something wrong with it. Not so much the animal cruelty side of it, it's all the other shit in the background. And the betting. I've never been a gambler, thank God I never got that back. I've got so many other bad vices, but I didn't get that one, thank God. Ducked and weaved. But today, I haven't seen the figures. They'll probably come out tomorrow, but you can expect over 200 million, 300 million, maybe 500 million was wagered on that one race yesterday. That one race. And tonight, there are homeless people sleeping hungry on cold streets in towns and cities all around this nation, while houses that could home these people are being kept empty by investment or investors who are just keeping the house clean, don't have to do any work to it, just waiting for the market to go up so I can resell it again and make money out of it. To the detriment of those sorts of people. And the elites will be quaffing their champagne out of the cup tonight and probably tomorrow and the rest of the week, because for some reason or other in this country, we seem to get terribly excited about these sporting events that, for the most part, do you really trust aren't rigged in some way, shape or form? I mean, no evidence, no proof, no nothing. And I'm not saying the Melbourne Cup was rigged in any way, shape or form, but we all know that there have been, we all know there have been many unsuccessful attempts, which makes me think that there have been a whole heap of really successful ones that we don't know about. Maybe not in the race that stops a nation, but in the industry in general. We know that the dish lickers, the dogs, are also highly compromised in a number of areas. And one of the friends of this show, a dear friend who passed away not too long ago, was working very hard to expose that. Now, I would like to keep his work going in that regard, and I'll need to get catch up with a few of his cohorts to see whether or not that is something that we can keep going on with in his name. But John was not a shy bloke, and he would be on the tip of the spear every night, and he was being chased by elements within the Greyhound Association of this country because of the truth he was speaking. And you might remember the Greyhound Associations of Australia are a little bit wary of any kind of publicity, bad publicity particularly, because they did go through a very bad patch of bad publicity a few years back. And I think the dogs were actually stopped from racing in New South Wales and Queensland and maybe Victoria as well for a period of time. Why? Because of cruelty to animals, not just the dogs that are racing, but the callous way that any pups that were bred were treated if they weren't deemed good enough to be running dogs. Quite a lot of them were used to blood other dogs, or just knocked on the head and killed or whatever, fed to various other fauna. And when this was discovered, predominantly in New South Wales, they shut the industry down for some months. It cost millions of dollars. And John was heavily involved behind all that, exposing the illegalities of it. And there is a lot more to come. So while we have waited a respectful time since John's passing, we do not want to lose the momentum that he had gathered. So I will be reaching out to the people around him and seeing what we can do to keep that momentum going, or restart it, as the case may be. I've just seen something pop up on a Facebook post that says, as 3I Atlas approaches, scientists have changed the SETI protocol. That's the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. And they were set up at the Parkes Observatory, the dish, for many years. Don't know if they're still there. I think they probably would be, because we're the biggest. That Parkes telescope is the biggest in the Southern Hemisphere, from memory, or at least used to be. Anyway, there has now been a change of direction from SETI. So the SETI protocol was, if you got some sort of extraterrestrial contact, was to reach out. Now it's not. You are prohibited from reaching out if you receive an extraterrestrial radio contact. There are some weird things going on with that 3I Atlas, but I smell a rat, and I think that rat is blue and might have a last name of Beam. I do smell a rat. So 3I Atlas may get to the moon and take a sharp left turn and then hover over the lawns of the White House for a while. That will be an astounding moment when it happens. But I don't think I'm going to believe it's aliens from another country. They will be fighting. There will be destruction. They will try and scare us into believing it. But I would argue, go and have a look at one of the Spider-Man movies where this superhero comes in. He's fighting all these weird things that have been manifested coming out of the other zone. And it turns out that they're telling you how Project Bluebeam works in that movie, using projectors, using all sorts of different things, sound effects, and real explosions. So they really do blow things up. It's got to look real. And people will die because it has to look real. But let's not go and get too concerned that they are actual aliens coming to us, whether it be on 3I Atlas or a TR-3B spaceship. Who knows? Who knows? it will be an exciting time, and I do look forward to sharing with you what I find out about it along the way. We can be guaranteed of one thing,
And what a clustered fuck this is.
That's what it'll be. Absolutely, I guarantee it. All right, folks, going to love you and leave you for tonight. I wasn't going to tell you, but I will. I mentioned the magpie. I'm never taking an animal to a vet again. If Sandy's still watching the show, she'll understand why. But I'm never taking an animal to a vet again. Just ridiculous. Beyond ridiculous. So, unfortunately, the little one didn't make it. So, not ready to talk about it yet. Not feeling good about it. At any rate, we will talk about it at some stage because I have a great deal of misgivings about the whole thing. But I don't want to go slandering anybody just yet. I'll do a little bit more research on the whole thing first. Have yourself a good night, folks. God love you. If you're out there helping others and doing it with a smile, then you are among the blessed. Thank you, too, for the prayers for Margie Sedgman, who rang me yesterday morning, or maybe this morning. She's telling me that she is almost in a position to be going home. That hopefully will happen late this week or early next week. It's not her that's holding up this process. It's some equipment. I think she needs a new bed or something at home, which has to be delivered. So that's going to take another few days. But as soon as that's there, Margie's going home. She's still an unwell lady and can do with your prayers, so please don't exclude her from them. But I'm so pleased that she's in a position now. She's fought off another battle of pneumonia. And when you reach a certain age in hospital, I'm going to be the worst person in hospital. When you reach a certain age, all they do is maintain you. They don't want to fix you. And Margie has pushed back so hard. She is an inspiration to everybody. To understand and learn the fight that she has been through. And in a lady who is, she's over 70, I'll say. And the strength of someone who is fighting multiple health battles and still able to gain something from this, the voice of freedom, something from the freedom movement in general, and to be able to stay so positive. She is an inspiration to me. She's an inspiration to anybody, I imagine, who is close to her. And I would hope that at some point in the not too distant future, I'll get an opportunity to introduce you to Margie, because she really is a very special person. And that means I've got to come to the Sunshine Coast. For me to come to the Sunshine Coast, it means I've got to get the bus on the road, and that requires a few bucks. So if you would like to help us out, then please do so at vofhq.com. You can become a member for as little as $2.50 a week. Or if you would like the chance to win $750 or a gram of Ainsley bullion, beautifully minted, into a bar, then we can help you out with that too at merch.vofhq.com. And there, for $2, you'll be able to buy a ticket in our lottery. You can buy a maximum of 20 tickets in the lottery. We only have 750 tickets to sell. And I think we've sold a little over 200 and something of them at the moment. So that'll leave, call it 500 left to sell. We would love you to take home either the cash or that little bit of gold, because who knows what it'll be worth next week or the week after or the week after that. It's not going down, put it that way. Anyway, if you can help us out, you've no idea what it'll mean to us. And Vince and I will talk more about that in the future. But there's a lot of things happening, folks, and we're going to have to start fighting a little bit for our own survival. So that might require me talking to you a bit more. Anyway, we shall push on regardless. And when the bus does get on the road, watch out for those dickheads. I'll be pushing.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up.
Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life.
It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back!
Does anybody else want to stay?
Let's rock!